Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and do some more turkey patterning, and today we've got another really interesting combo to try out. I've had several requests for these particular shells and we have tested them in 20 gauge with some pretty solid results so far. So now we've got the 12 gauge variant of them as well, and I still suspect that they will probably continue that trend of being some pretty decent performers. This company seems to have this style of shell figured out decently well, so we'll see what we can get, at least for a starting point here today. Before our shells we've got today, I picked up some more of these Migra Hybrid turkey loads, but in 12 gauge this time. These are a lead TSS hybrid, and I think they're $35-ish a box for 5 shells. So more expensive than lead, but far less than TSS. But they are a 12 gauge, 3-inch, 2-ounce payload of lead 5s over TSS 9s, moving about 1,100 feet per second. And you can see here on the side of the box, apparently there's about 417 pellets per shell on average, and about 217 of them are the 5s, and about 200 of them are the 9s. So pretty interesting shell for sure. And when it comes to Migra, their waterfowl stuff has been pretty nice performing in our testing with them, and their turkey loads that we've started testing have also been pretty solid, including the 20 gauge hybrid loads. But generally I've found that Migra usually does pretty well with their blend and stacked loads like this. The steel waterfowl stuff that's the blend loads has always been solid, so I expect that trend to continue with these shells as well today. Before the setup we're going to run them in, I brought out the Remington 1187. It's got a 28-inch barrel on it, and we're going to be running a Comp-N-Choke for our starting point anyway. This is the extra full, which is a 665 constriction choke. We've already seen some nice performances from it before, but we've never tested a blend or stacked load like this through it yet. So we'll see what happens, whether this choke does well with these shells, whether these shells actually like the 665 constriction or not. But ultimately, I suspect this might be a pretty decent combination if everything works out the way I hope it does. Before our test today, we're running everything the same as usual, that being the turkey target at 40 yards and the chrono to get our velocity. So let's get you guys to view that target and see what the 12 gauge Migra hybrid shells can give us for a starting point. Alright, so we had 1150 from that shell through the chronograph. The box claim is 1100, so we are just a little bit above that number, but still mid 1100s is just fine for what this shell is. So how well did it actually pattern for a starting point down there at 40? Let's go check it out and see. Alright, so here we have our 40-yard turkey paper, and we see some pretty interesting results here. Yes, we might have favored just a hair low with that particular combination, but overall, I think we were pretty centered up on the paper, other than just being low. Do we still have a dead bird at 40? Yes, indeed we do. We have a number 5 pellet right through the brain, and several more as we get down towards the bottom of the spine. But obviously, if we had that pattern just a little bit higher, he would absolutely be hammered for sure. So looking at this pattern as a whole here, it's decently solid. I don't think it's perfect yet. I think we can definitely get better out of it, and this might even be a little bit too much choke constriction. It's 665, which is very standard for a turkey load, but from what we saw with the 20 gauge variant of these shells, they do tend to like a little bit less choke constriction, and sometimes blend loads can be a little bit finicky like that. Once you find that right choke or constriction that they like, then you'll really know it. Now this is not a bad pattern by any means, but it's not perfect either. We have a decently even core area going on down here, kind of right in front of that bird's beard area. I don't think there's any major voids in there. It appears to be a decently even spread of the TSS and lead pellets, but outside of that, we definitely have our fair share of strings, and a lot of these extra pellets around the edges are the lead pellets. I tried to differentiate a little bit in the size of circle that I drew between lead and TSS, the lead being the bigger circles and the TSS being the smaller dots. It might translate a little bit off camera here, but either way, I think our core is probably a little bit more TSS than it is lead, because I think we have a good amount of lead pellets around the edges, and that could be another sign that we might be over constricting these just a little bit. How we have a decent core, but it kind of tries to scatter the edges a little bit on us. So not a bad pattern to start with, but let's pull the turkey paper down. We'll actually finish our circles and count some pellets and see how good it actually performed. All right, so now we have our turkey target down and out of the way, and we can see how our pattern actually performed a little bit better. And it's about like I thought it was, but now we can just see it a little bit better. I can tell you right now, we definitely have way more TSS pellets in the core and way more lead pellets outside of our core. I counted every single pellet within here and made the difference between the two. Inside of our 10-inch core, we have a total of 160 pellets within there. Pretty even, no major voids or anything like that in there. Might be a small one, kind of 1 o'clock, maybe 2 o'clock over here, the top right corner of that 10-inch ring, but nothing too bad there. But most of it is TSS. Within our 10-inch ring, we have 27 lead 5s and 133 TSS pellets to make up that 160 pellets total. Outside of that, with our 20-inch leeway ring, the bottom 2/3 of it looks pretty good, but we do get a little thin up there towards the top and a little bit top left corner. We had a total of 158 additional pellets within there. However, we had a 50-50 split between lead and TSS there, 79 of each type of pellet. So we can definitely see how most of our TSS is centralized, and the farther we get to the edges of the pattern, the more lead pellets we pick up. So I don't think this is quite the right choke constriction for these shells. It's not a bad pattern. It's perfectly capable at 40 yards, but we've got some work to do. We've got a decent core area, but a lot of our edges are mostly lead with some TSS sprinkled throughout there, and we definitely need to condense that down some around the edges. Even if we can just bring those lead pellets into that 20-inch ring a little bit better, that would still be a pretty nice looking pattern. So not perfect, but it's a starting point. Overall though, this is probably still one of the better performing blend, stacked, whatever you want to call it, lead TSS type of shells. They have tended to be really finicky. So the fact that we already have a decent starting point to work off of is definitely helpful. I'm thinking probably a little less choke constriction than what that 665 is probably going to be our best bet. Maybe a 670, maybe even a 675 might be the way to go with these, but we'll see what happens as we continue to test it. Either way though, good core, but it gets a little bit less impressive the farther we go around the edges. I might have hoped for a little bit better coming into it, but now we know, and we can work from here based on what we see. But I'm curious if that same trend continues, where our core is mostly TSS and the outer edges are lead. So we'll have to pay attention to that as we continue our testing. And here's the wad out of that shell. Pretty interesting for sure. It kind of looks like one of those ballistic product low bore contact wads. It's got the ribs up the side, but I don't think I've ever run into a gray one. And these feel really kind of soft and squishy. Pretty interesting. Definitely not as stiff as what we would typically see in most turkey wads. So maybe the first time we've ran into this one in particular, but pretty interesting. You can definitely tell we scored the edges up quite a bit. Again, might be a little bit tight on the choke constriction. So we'll see how they do as we continue testing them, but no major damage overall here today. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about that performance right there? It's decent. It's perfectly usable at 40 yards. For a blend load, that's really not too bad at all. But we've got some work to do. We've got a decent core going on, but it's mostly TSS. Outside of that, especially as we get outside of the 20-inch ring, that's where most of our lead pellets are. So it really looks like we're over constricting these a little bit. We started blowing the edges out, and most of our lead is outside of where we kind of want it to be. That might not necessarily be a bad thing on its own. For somebody that wants a little more forgiving of a pattern, a little more leeway, they're not going to mind having those lead pellets around the edges. But if they have a centered up shot, then they're nailing them with TSS. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That could be pretty intriguing for some people to have that as an option. But overall, I think we're still floating somewhere in the middle. It's a perfectly fine pattern, but it's not the best. It's not perfect for sure. And for between 35 and 40 bucks a box for these, they are right down the middle between the lead and TSS load. And I think our pattern kind of followed suit right down the middle there between a lead and TSS shell. So we've got some tuning to do. A little less choke constriction, I think, is probably going to be where we want to be at. So we'll see what happens as we continue testing them. Maybe what we'll do is we'll bring it out here and run them side by side with two different chokes. Maybe we'll run a 660 versus a 670 side by side or something like that. You guys will have to let me know what you might want to see. But leave all your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Migra Hybrid loads yet? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Is that a pattern or a combo you would hunt with? Or would you prefer to see it a little more condensed balanced, maybe a little bit more even mixture between the lead and TSS pellets? Or is that about what you're looking for, or would about expect to see from a shell like that? And of course, like I just mentioned, what other choke combos do you want to see us run those loads through that you think might be a good performer? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All the information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.